As I mentioned, I serve on the council of Lyndhurst in Tarrytown, which is owned by the National Trust for Historic Preservation. I had the privilege of meeting Philip Johnson those many years ago as he was donating the property to the National Trust. I mentioned to him how I felt in the glass house, the same feeling that I had when I first went to Thorncraft Chapel in Eureka Springs, Arkansas. He was so flattered to be compared to Faye Jones.
That is such a great, that's such a great story to share with us. And I think that I met Mr. Johnson when I was very, very young because my grandmother was friends with him. So I didn't really know him personally, of course. But that's kind of, for a man who definitely had an ego and loved to be worshipped, he still had a sense of humility. So that's an interesting story, an interesting anecdote. I've never been there. I know of it, but I've never been. Yeah, there's so many incredible places to see in this country alone. It's like a lifetime you could spend. Any other questions? Yep, right here.
If that's all right.
Of course.
My wife and I went to the opening of the Glass House in 2007, and Jens Reesum was there. And we owned a very large sideboard designed by Reesum that we bought in an auction maybe 30 years ago.
Wow.
And so I went up to him to introduce myself. He was very approachable. And he told me how to care for it. It's made of walnut, unfinished. And he asked me where I got it. And I told him at an auction. He said, my kids are trying to get pieces of my designs on eBay, and they're having a really tough time.
Oh my gosh, that's wild. Wow, well, he really did customize furniture. In fact, the house that I grew up in, which was the Chivvis house, my mom, who's here? Mom, stand up for a sec. Oh, just stand. There she is. There she is. Now you can see her. So there, the couch in that house was custom built by Jens for Mom and Dad, and he had also custom built a couch for my mom's parents in the Bremer house, which you also see in the film. So I just hear from other people, like the people who now own the Wasana house, the Madisoni Valentines. They have several pieces that he custom made for them, and they were just blown away by his just genuine passion for the furniture that he was making for the space and the reason that it was being built and put in that space. So I know for him, for a number of years, he did have that frustration of, gosh, my kids really would like to find more of my furniture, and now you can find it. I mean, people are selling it, and you can pay a pretty penny for it now online. Mostly an auction. I haven't looked on eBay as much, but that's really neat that you have one of his pieces. That's so cool. We have a question way in the back.
So obviously you grew up in one of these amazing houses. Tell us, if you would, a little bit about just making this documentary. And obviously you also had the opportunity to interview people who have since died, which is incredible that you captured this moment. So just a little bit about the impetus.
Sure, thank you. Yes, I did grow up in the Chivvis house. I was the little girl with her Snoopy in the giant fireplace, or I am that little girl. Still am, actually. And I'm a filmmaker by trade. Most of my work in the past has been more like National Geographic, Discovery Channel, expedition, science, history, nature stuff. But way back, about 20 years ago, Mom, again, who's here, said, Devon, you've just got to start interviewing these people because they're not getting any younger. Just get the interviews in the can. Do what you can. Every time you come back to New Canaan, try and film something. So it was great advice by Mom. And it only took 20 years to figure out, where's the money going to come from? How am I going to put this together? How am I going to finish filming? And so I had a window in between other projects, basically in 24, 25. And so that's how we pulled it off, thanks to a lot of people who are passionate about helping us get it done. And then we have our couple of corporate sponsors that you might have caught a glimpse of in the beginning, Design Within Reach being a very obvious one, because most of the furniture that they sell today you can see in a scene in this movie. And then our other corporate sponsor is WWII, which is a German brand And they're very interested in developing community around design and looking towards communities to help inform their designs. So they were really interested in the idea of community that was New Canaan at that time period. There's a question here in the front. Why don't I just give you my mic?
A wonderful documentary. Thank you. Where else can one see it other than the people who are sitting here?
Great question. Thank you for that. We are currently working on our distribution deal, which is a very tricky thing. So we will be available on your, most obvious streamers eventually. But right now, we are still doing this theatrical run. So if anybody wants to see this film or knows of anyone who might want to see it anywhere in the world, we would be delighted to show it. In fact, we're showing right now in New Zealand. We're part of a festival there, and they're showing the film over 45 times. So we're really delighted about that. Yes. The question was, is the film being shown in New Canaan? So we did our East Coast premiere almost a year ago at the New Canaan Playhouse, which was an amazing event. We had a great time, packed house, and we showed it about 5 more times, I think, after that. But we are getting on the schedule again because people have just been saying, come on, you got to show it again in New Canaan. You got to do it here. You got to do it there. So if you, thank you. If you follow us at theharvard5.com, that's our website. And I suppose Ashley could probably send that out perhaps to people who've signed up for this screening and just give you that web address again. That's where we publish all of the up and coming screenings. Thank you. There's a question here on the
form following function. How do you heat glass houses like that?
That is a fun question. The best of the best did really cite the property where the house would be constructed and really tried to incorporate the angularity of the house into where the sun would come in depending on what season, and also how to keep it cool, because glass can really make things hot as well as it can make things very cold. It was trickier in the mid-century because they had single pane glass. That's what they were working with. Now we're up to double pane, which is the house that I grew up in, and now you can even get carbon-coated, blah-blah-blah, triple, quadruple glass, which helps a lot with just insulating the home, both for the heat and for the cold. A lot of these homes, and the earlier ones in the true mid-century, also had radiant heat. So they had copper piping throughout all the flooring. And that was a great idea until it wasn't, because the copper does not hold up all that well. So there were a lot of incidents of flooding and having to rip up your floors and put something new in. But at the time, it was the coolest idea. And my grandparents had it for a while, and I just remember, oh, this feels so good on my feet. In the blue?
Roofs have problems? I'm sorry.
Oh, the question is, speaking of technical details, did the roofs have problems? There's a funny story that goes with that, and sometimes John Johansen claims that this was his story. Some other people claim that it's a Frank Lloyd Wright story, so I'm not sure who's telling the truth, or maybe they both did. But in the beginning, there were lots and lots of leaks in these homes. So the story goes, the homeowner would, be distraught. I'm having a dinner party, and there's a big rainstorm, and all of a sudden the rainstorm starts coming through the rooftop, and so you call up your architect in a panic. What do I do? Well, move the table. That's what you do. Very simple. So yes, there were a lot of leaky roofs in the beginning, but eventually, as time went on and the engineering, grew along with the designs, they put a slight pitch to the houses that is mostly you can't even see with your eye. So the Chivvis house, which is technically the last mid-century modern house marked by, might even be the National Trust that actually did this survey. Knock on wood, sorry Mom and Dad if I'm jinxing the house, but we've had very little trouble over the 50 years or so. So the engineering has improved. Yeah. Any other, we have a question over here. Thank you.
Can you still go on a glass house?
The question is, can you still go on a glass house tour? Yes. So every other year, New Canaan Museum and Historical Society holds the glass house tour. And that is usually the exclamation point on the end of what we now have in New Canaan called October for Design. That occurs every year, and that's a whole month of celebrations and exhibitions and performances of all the art that occurs in New Canaan. It still is a very, very artistic town. So it's every other year that they hold the Great Glass House Tour, which is on a single Saturday, usually at the end of October. But I would buy your tickets early. This is a year off, so it'll be 27 when they do the next Glass House Tour. Yeah. You can always... Yeah, I was just going to say that. So the glass house itself is open all the time. Well, with the exception of a few months in the winter, they close down. But if you go to theglasshouse.org, you can sign up for a tour. So they're very open for business. And then the Gores Pavilion, which you saw in the movie as well, that's open. That's in a public park in town now. And so, yeah, those two are very accessible. Yeah. Oh, we've got one over here, and then next Or, I'm sorry, we've got a microphone right there, if you don't mind holding. Oh, we've got one there too. Yikes. Okay.
I was very friendly with Ruth Smithers, who was a real close friend of mine. Do you know why she hired a Houston architect to design their house?
That's a great question. Ruthie, who is such a character, and another thank you to Mom for saying you've got to go interview Ruthie Smithers because she is one heck of a woman. She is from Houston. So that's the only excuse I have for her. And I think perhaps she may have had a family connection as well to the architect out of Houston that she did design her house with. And maybe she had chosen him already prior to phoning up Philip Johnson. I don't really know 100%. I wish I did, but that's my only excuse for her. But other than she's a great character. There was another one here. Thank you, Mary.
Yeah, I was just wondering how many of those homes are left, because you showed that a lot of them were demolished.
So the original count of original mid-century modern homes was around 150, and those would have been built between about 1945. There was one that was actually built in 1939, but that was a real singularity. So roughly between 1945, 46 through 1978, which is Mom and Dad's house being the very last, that whole count was about 150 homes. Now the count is about 90 of those are still standing. So it's better than one might imagine, but the sad part is that a lot of those were really important homes. Like, for example, Eliot Noyes' first family home, that was torn down. A number of Breuer homes were torn down. So not every one of those homes should be kept or should be renovated for today's day and age, because as the modernists themselves would say, you have to be in the moment. You have to build for what your needs are in the moment. So one might have a definition of I need a 18-car garage, and that's fine. If that's what you need, that's what you need. So if you need to take a mid-century modern house and modify it, let's hope you do it with respect. And maybe that's better than knocking it down. Maybe it isn't. Maybe you knock it down and start over. I think all of them are so open-minded to the purpose that they would be willing to consider what you might need to do to make a house functional for your current needs. But still, my grandmother would rip me out of school and say, there's another wrecking ball coming. Come on, let's go. Let's take photos. Jump on the wrecking ball. No, she wasn't that crazy. Yes, we have one here in the stripe. There's a mic for you.
Did anyone ever live in the glass house?
Oh, yeah. Philip Johnson and his partner David Whitney lived there. They also had their place in Manhattan. And so in the beginning, it was more of their weekend house. But as they grew older, especially as Philip grew older, he was quite a bit older than David Whitney, his partner, that did become their main residence. And that is where Philip actually passed away, in the glass house. Yeah.
Were those dancers at the Glass House Merce Cunningham?
They were Merce Cunningham, indeed. And actually, this is a cheat, so now you all are insiders. I filmed that myself during the very first opening of the Glass House once the National Trust for Historic Preservation took it over. That was the very first summer party. And so I was thinking, racking my brain, how do I get, there are all kinds of rights issues with showing performances, among many other rights issues. And I thought, oh my gosh, I filmed them in 2007. And so we made it black and white, and I think it kind of works. But you nailed it. That is Merce Cunningham. Yep. It was neat. Anybody else? Oh, we've got a green sweater.
I was at NYU when Philip Johnson was building the very controversial library. I was also in art history, and we studied him. But that was a nightmare building. I love modern art, but that one, there's no floors. It's just the edge. And when I walked in, I said, oh, my God, it's inviting you to jump and commit suicide.
Oh, boy.
They did. Because it looks like a prison, and people were protesting that it was blocking the sun on Washington 4th. So I love modern, but that was a failure.
Yes.
That was very controversial, and it was not. They had to actually put railings so the students wouldn't. The NYU library. When my day, it was not the law library. It was the general library. And as a student, we had to go to basements to different, we don't have a library. So now the law school took over. But that was controversial. Form did not follow function.
Right. And that's a great story because Philip was criticized. There's a line I had to leave out just because I couldn't put everything in that I wanted to put into this film. But it's a little quick story that John Johansen tells about Philip Johnson, and he basically says, well, when Philip basically went off his rocker and became a postmodernist, and good God, I had to stop talking to him, and for that reason we didn't talk for 10 years. And then one day I got over it and I walked down his driveway and he welcomed me inside and we had a martini, and it was like nothing had ever happened between us. But he was very judged even among this group for going and doing some really crazy, nonsensical, according to them, postmodern work. We had one in the back here, I think, and then one over here.
First of all, thanks for this movie. It's amazing.
Oh, thank you so much.
So well done. So beautiful.
Thank you.
So efficient in its storytelling. Great. Really great.
Thank you so much.
Do you? I realize you grew up there, and so that's your home base. Do you know of other communities that have really high concentrations? Like we spent some time in Wellfleet, and there's apparently a Yale group of architects that built some houses in the woods there.
Yeah.
But I was wondering if you had any other ideas about where else this
That's a great question, and there are pockets throughout the U.S. Peoria, Illinois is one. Kalamazoo, Michigan is another. Sarasota, Florida. Wellfleet is an amazing one where a great community of locals has very recently restored Breuer's own beach house there in Wellfleet, which I encourage everybody to go and see. It was about to be torn down, and they came up and they said, no, you can't do that. So they've done an amazing restoration. Los Angeles, it's not as small in square footage of a community, but there are a ton of incredible homes, from the case study houses to all of the projects in Palm Springs and peppered throughout Los Angeles County and the hills. Those are just off the top of my head to name a few. I'm sure other people in the audience, just yell it out if you know of another place that I haven't said. Vermont, like near Stratton, right? Oh, you do? Oh my God, that's so cool. Oh, thank you. Yeah. Oh, yes. There you go. That's not an easy or inexpensive thing to do. I know. Yeah, and I think a lot of that was that these guys also vacationed together. So they would have the collaborative, competitive style, but then their families would vacation together. So Wellfleet was definitely a hot spot for that reason, where Breuer had his home. A few of them went to Martha's Vineyard. The Noyes had have a vineyard house still. And then the area where your home is, there were peppered into that area as well. Mary, you had a question?
I have a comment about the people who originally owned the Bridge House by
Yes.
Johansen. Mrs. Warner went into my husband's art gallery and bought a painting. And after she had hung it in her bedroom, she asked if we wanted to come and see how it was hung and why and all. So we went over there and we went into her bedroom, and there, hanging on the glass wall, was the painting facing the bed. And she said at night, when it was illuminated, she would sit in bed and look at the painting, which I thought was really clever.
That is so cool. I've never heard that story. That's really neat. That's a really cool story. Very clever. Yeah, they were really inventive, the Warners. They were very young, as their daughter, Allie Pine, says in the movie. They were very, very young when they commissioned that house. I love that house, too. Anybody else? Anybody want to share? Oh, we've got one here.
Do you know how it is that Johnson was selected to be the architect at Lincoln Center, what was then the New York State Theater, now the Koch Theater?
You know, I don't. I wish I had a really specific answer for that. The only guess I have is that he designed the Wadsworth and a couple of other more theater type of...
I actually know that
venues.
answer.
Where-
I'm right back here.
Hi.
Yeah, I used to work in that building.
Oh my
and,
gosh, great. You tell us then.
So first of all, I will say he did not put a lot of offices in that building. So I worked first in an interior office and then in a basement. And I would think this is the man who lives in a glass house, and we don't have any natural light. He, at Harvard, became friends with Lincoln Kirstein, who was one of the founders of New York City Ballet. And Lincoln was, such a force of nature and really pushed to have Lincoln Center itself built. It wasn't named for him, but he pulled in Philip as a friend of his to design that theater.
Oh, that's
and he
great.
also, you might have recognized if you go to that theater, the Nadelman sculptures that are in the glass house are those huge sculptures in the lobby of the State Theater.
That is so cool. Thank you. Thank you for filling in that blank. I can't hear you. Oh, the tower. Yes. Mom, can you say that through the mic?
The tower in the glass house property is named for Lincoln Kirstein.
Yes, the giant sculpture. There's a side-by-side slides in the movie after you've seen shots of it, and then there's side-by-side slides. That's a tongue twister. When it was under construction, Philip is seen climbing on one of them, and my grandmother is the other person climbing on them. And so those sculptures were named for him, for Lincoln Kirstein. Thank you. Oh, we've got another one there.
Go ahead.
Oh, okay, hello, yes. Do we have a mic? Here it comes for you.
In the opening of the film, you have that little story of the little girl in the house. And was that you by any chance?
That was not. That was the daughter of Pam and Landis Gores. But it's a very relatable story, I can tell you. 100 times over people have said, "What do you mean you grew up in a glass house? What are you talking about?" And then you hear, "Well, do not throw stones," and you get all those jokes too. But it's fun. It's really fun. It was a great, amazing house to grow up in. You could ride bikes inside and have, squirt gun games indoors and do lots of stuff that we maybe got in a little bit of trouble for, but it didn't really harm anything. So, anybody else? Well, thank you all so much. Oh.